Hey guys, bachphotography here, and today we are looking at a neon portrait session that we did at nighttime. And if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell as well so that you don't miss out on any videos in the future. And today we are here with Ellie May, and I'll link in the description a link to her Instagram page if you're interested in checking out more of her work. And I'll also link in the description some of the raw files for this photo shoot if you'd like to edit along or just have a go at the photos in your own time. And in this video, we're just going to go through a tutorial and a step-by-step of how you can take neon, colorful portraits using available light from neon lighting. So we're going to go through the camera equipment I used in this photo shoot, we're going to go through settings, and then we're going to go into Photoshop and do all the post-production on a particular image that we'll look at later in the video. And there'll be a link in the description to all the equipment I use in this photo shoot if you're interested in checking that out as well. So the first thing you want to do when you're looking at doing a neon portrait session is you want to find somewhere that has lots of really colorful, bright lights. And there are a few really good places to find these. One of them is a gaming arcade, which is where we are here. But you can also do them in places like Chinatown in your city. They often have some really nice neon lights in those sorts of areas, or really anywhere in the city where they have some bright neon lights. And when you're looking for lights, what's really important is you don't just have one block color as your light source, because when you have multiple colors of light coming from different directions, it adds a depth to the image that you can't get from just one light. And also when we do color correction on the image at the end of this video, you'll see why just having one light makes it really difficult to make a nice color balance in the image. So the camera equipment I used in this photo shoot was my Sony a7R II, and I was using a Sigma 50mm 1.4 art lens. So you could use a different type of lens, you could use a 35mm or an 85mm. It's important that you shoot at a low aperture for these sorts of photos because it is quite dark when you're doing these sorts of shoots. The only light source you'll normally have are the neon lights, and the rest of the scene will normally be quite dark, so having a low aperture is good. If you only have a kit lens, that's fine, but using a low aperture prime is the best way to go for this type of shoot. So this is the photo that we're going to be looking at in particular in this photo shoot. I shot at an aperture of f1.4, a shutter speed of 1/200th of a second, and an ISO of 640. So I shot at a aperture of 1.4 so I could get as much light as possible into my camera because it was really dark where we were shooting. When you shoot at a low aperture, it makes your background nice and blurry compared to the sharpness of your subject. So it was really nice to make the lighting in the background beautiful and creamy by shooting at a nice low aperture. It also gives you a bit of separation between your subject and the background because the background is super blurry and your subject is nice and sharp. I shot at a shutter speed of 1/200th of a second because it was a fast enough shutter speed for me to shoot handheld and still get beautiful sharp images, but still quite slow to get as much light as possible into my camera sensor. And finally I shot at an ISO of 640 because it was so dark in the place we were shooting. That is the ISO I had to bump up so that I could get a nice exposure in the image. So finally, before we jump into Photoshop and do all the post-processing on this image, I want to talk a little bit about the lighting and how to get the best images in your neon portraits. So what you want to do is you want to get your model to get as close to the lights as possible, because normally it is so dark that unless you get your model really close, you won't actually have enough light to get a good image. But also it means that the colors in the portrait will actually be as bright and strong as possible. So getting your model as close to the lights as possible is the best way to get a good neon portrait. So now let's jump into Photoshop and have a look at the editing I did on this image. So this is what the original image looked like. We're going to do some very heavy post-processing on this, but the actual time it takes is not that long. So the first thing we're going to do is really smash the clarity up because we're going to make this image look a little bit cartoony and a little bit wacky, and adding a lot of clarity really helps. The next thing we're going to do is boost the shadows so we can see the background and also make the hair look more three-dimensional. And the most important step is this step, which is changing the color balance to make it look all neon and interesting colors. And what we're going for here is to make Ellie's face sort of the right color that you'd see in a regular photo, but just a little bit more crazy, a little bit more caricatured. So we're going for a light pink in this one and then having a blue background. So just messing around there with the color sliders, changing the color balance of the image until we're happy, and then boosting the saturation up and dropping the vibrance down. And what that does is essentially leaves all of these super bold colors where they are, but then drops the slightly less bold colors down a little bit. So that's the first thing we're going to do. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to drop the clarity on our brush tool, and then we're going to drop the black shadows and exposure just so we can use our tool as a masking tool, and then we can see exactly where we're pressing our brush. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to mask all of her skin that we'd like to make smoother. And once we've made a mask of all of the parts of her skin that we'd like to make smooth. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to get rid of the blacks, the shadows, and the exposure changes that we had, which leaves us just the original image, and then we're going to drop the clarity just to make her skin a little bit more smooth. Next thing here we're going to do is add just a little bit of exposure and a little bit of contrast into her eyes just to make them pop a little bit more, particularly because you can't see them that well behind her glasses. Now I think her glasses are really awesome for this photo shoot and they're a real great feature, so what we're going to do here is just add a little bit of clarity to the glasses. Just going to revert that change, so I didn't like that one too much, and just add some to a little bit of the lenses of her glasses just to make them stand out even more than they do now. And also because there are some really great colors in the right lens of her glasses, I'm just going to drop the highlights a little bit so you can see the color in there a little bit more as well. So the next thing we're going to do here is just add a little bit more clarity to Ellie's hair just to make it stand out even more. So what the clarity brush does essentially is add some mid-tone contrast just to make the depth of the shadows a little bit more dark. So that's everything in Camera Raw. Now we're going to jump into Photoshop and just edit the final changes on this image. So what we're going to do here is just remove any of the little blemishes that we can see on Ellie's skin. Actually her skin was really good, so there isn't that much work to do here, but just little blemishes here and there on her skin. I'm just going to use the patch tool to remove those. And that's pretty much everything for this photo, so I really hope you liked this tutorial. Please leave a comment on what you thought of the final image, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my newest videos coming out soon. And once again, all the RAWs will be in the description along with all the equipment I used in this video. So once again, thank you very much for watching.